This is a computer I bought on eBay for 40 bucks. How cheap? Well, let's see what 40 bucks gets you on the eBay market. Preferably, you should be getting something around a 6th gen i5 for 40 bucks, but but that's a Dell Optiplex, and this is a custom system. So there's some trade-offs. For 40 bucks, you can either get 40 bucks custom system. Doesn't get you much because people charge you whatever the hell they want. Good enough. Have I been here before? Yes. Am I gonna keep doing it? Yes. Will I ever learn that it's a waste of money and I don't actually get any views? No. Here we have a PC from the dinosaur years. Well, not exactly the Neanderthal years. Yeah, that seems more like it. And I need to find a screwdriver. Alright, actually, after finding a screwdriver with the tiniest bit possible. Actually, did I even put back my screwdriver kit? Yeah, I did. We get a horrible side panel with no way to grip it. And here's our delicious motherboard. I actually had this exact same motherboard. One issue though, I broke it. 8 gig sticks and dual channel, that's up. I think I can steal some RAM. Anyways, the seller listed this as no HDD. That's actually, oh, this is added in for I/O. That's cool. That's cool. No HDD, no boot device, and just about ready for a GPU upgrade. As we see here, we have a Corsair 6X600M. Okay. I mean, not impressive, but it's definitely going to have enough juice to power our GPUs and such. Also, to be careful what you buy on the internet, as this is a semi-modular power supply, which is something done with, which tells a lot about this GPU's age. And if we take a poke inside, we have nothing. And a USB port. For whatever reason. Nothing. There's not. Whoa, eBay seller. It looks like there's no PCIe connection to this power supply. How cheap. But anyways, we can always just switch out this power supply with any other old power supply. Thermaltake are still making these old Smart Series power supplies, which you shouldn't trust, but since they're so cheap and you have cheap hardware that don't stress this out, you can take it, I guess. Gamers Nexus said it's okay. It's gonna be okay for this. Ideally, you could reuse this power. If you do get a semi-modular power supply, you would want to reuse the included. You would want to just order a power cable from Amazon and add a GPU in. But since I'm recording this now and don't want to waste any more money, I'm just gonna rip this power supply out and pray. Well, I'll be damned. This motherboard has an 8-pin instead of a 4-pin. Even though this is a 4th gen Intel i5. They don't make them like they used to. So, about the case. There's no 120mm fan holes, even though this is ATX inside. There's a lot of hard drive cases. I could have used this for a NAS. Could if I could figure out how a NAS works. But the ATX standard. How life would have been harder without it. We got some nasty, actually my camera can't pick up the nasty. We got some nasty on the case. We got a decent power button. We got 2 separate holes for microphone and headphone jack. We got USB 2.0 and a 3 eSATA. Is that a is that an SD card reader? Oh, that's the SD card reader. Some of these is too old for me to know. And we got a damaged port for something that doesn't exist anymore. So, gotta wipe down this thing before I use it. Internally, there's a minimal amount of disease everywhere. And at least it posts, so that means we actually got a functioning system. Now, to look at the graphics cards I'm going to drop in here. What this case lacks in fans, it makes up for in, just ventilation holes. A time before tempered glass was popular. So there's vents here, vents there, and a vent here. So all the CPU fan has to do is suck air through this hole. In Team Fortress 2, other than my piss poor skill, we see a stable 30 FPS average. 47 if I'm being exact, but it's hard to game and read FPS numbers. Our 1% lows are 30s at least. And 0.1% too. CPU is not doing too well. That's probably due to dried up thermal paste that's currently in there trying to cool this system. Ooh. But even without any anti-aliasing, this CPU, iGPU, is struggling to get a decent 60 FPS. But with a simple few upgrades, I'm sure we can get a stable 60 FPS in this what is supposed to be a 2-year-old game. Not even gonna try to play Forza Horizon on this. And I got spied. Oh well. To be exact, not gonna play Forza Horizon on this iGPU, if you don't know what I was meaning. Well, I don't know. I didn't get any film of this, but this is really hot and really loud. And that's why you should use an aftermarket cooler when you're using an Intel CPU. Well, and cooling aside, the power supply unit is the only form of air exhaust for this poor thing, and it's doing bad. like longevity wise, this is not a good idea. But right now wise, if I fail to remount this cooler, I don't know what I'm doing. That's dust. Alright, I need to get a wipe. Some basic upgrades. Actually, basic things you should do. Repasting. And 4 more gigabytes of RAM. These are Corsair sticks that are 2 gigabytes each. 4 gigabytes each, so they and add up with the currently 8 gigs installed here, we should add up to 16. Damn, this thermal paste is actually fighting back. Thermal paste should be paste. I was trying to get on that paste. There we go. Now let's see how our performance improves with 8 more sticks. 8 gigabytes more and repasted paste. Should probably clean up this mess of a cable tie.
In a different map, we actually get 60 FPS with our little memory increase and our better temperatures. Oh shit. He burned to a crisp and I couldn't help him. And I got flogged. Well, anyways, our 1% lows are near 30. Our 0.1% lows are still... Oh, 40. Our 1% lows are at the 40s. That's a major improvement from just 8 more gigabytes of RAM. One thing I want to note is our power draw. Without an iGPU, we're only drawing 50 watts and getting this performance. And that's in 2025. Of course, this CPU can't play the latest and greatest, but if you are having something like an Ryzen 5 8600G, you will be able to play the latest and greatest and be able to upgrade to a better card later. Ooh, pushed him off. Just like in later testing, we'll be adding in different GPUs and seeing how much of an improvement we'll get. But for now, this is just no GPU, 2020, 1080p, no anti-aliasing, lowest settings, and I died. Yeah. We seem to be having a strange issue. Our Cinebench score says we are doing shit. And that could be due to our piss poor clock speed. And the S on this i5 or 5070S. Not sure if the eBay listing specifically listed this as an S CPU. This could be the seller's fault. This could be my fault. Yes, this is the seller's fault. They did not list the CPU as an S. Disappointing. Well, excuse for a CPU upgrade, I guess.
we're going to be dropping in the i7 47070 to see if that helps with our little CPU issue, because something seems to be wrong with this CPU. It is slow, and I do not know why. Well, that was disappointing. Replacing our stock cooler. No, we're keeping this. Replacing our CPU, which was with its slow clock speeds, with a slightly more familiar CPU. I've used this i7 before, but I'm not sure if I used this on this i7 on this channel before. But I used it before on a different testbed rig. Oh, I hate these stock coolers. It never feels right going on. Alright, let's see if that improves performance.
We have nearly doubled our points, and not to mention we have also doubled our we have also doubled our heat output. Well, actually not doubling our power draw with only around a 20-watt increase in CPU. Man, if only Intel kept this technology up. But then again, I wish they didn't keep this technology up, because we've been stuck in an Intel dark age with about quad cores. And it seems we're gonna hit another Intel dark age where Intel's in denial that their best selling points is probably going to be their GPUs in Intel Core 3s.
Wombo combo, wombo wombo. We have 4 GPUs in 4 different price range, actually 2 different price ranges. One is, these two are below 100 and around the same price as the computer itself. These two cost more than the computer itself, and probably its upgrades, because people like to sell this 1650 that's not worth much for a lot of money. So let's see the performance difference between the 4. All games will be tested at 1080p, medium settings, and we'll see. First off, let's go with the 980 from EVGA.
The GTX 980 in this system, paired up with an old i7 from around the same age, it handles pretty well. With a little FSR, you could probably get higher FPS in Forza Horizon 5. But I've already done a GTX 980 video in Forza Horizons, so let's talk more about the CPU, which seems to be cooking itself at a good 70s to 80s zone. Not good, not ideal, but it's an ATX case. It's not like you're stuck. It's not like the mounting bracket for your cooler is stuck to the chassis of the case.
Well, other than the mess on my table, I don't have any drawers to clean up with. We're gonna take the RX 550. This is an 4GB VRAM card, around, and on paper, no, not even. This is an entry level. I wanted to say mid-range. No, this is display adapter. Technically, it is a display adapter by classification. So, sometimes mid-range, sometimes display adapter. It's not bad, not great, not terrible for what it was when it was new. And it is 3 years younger than the GTX 980. Came out. I'll set up the dates in editing. But anyways, let's see if getting a newer card into this system will do any better. And I mean by newer, I mean slightly younger. This is not new in any way, shape, or form. Not compared to the 3050 I'm gonna put into it. You can tell this is an old case when the case never expects anything better than, I mean, anything bigger than a single slot graphics card. Like, I can get this pretty easily out and get it back in pretty easily. But if I were to install something like the GTX 1650, oh boy, that does not feel good at right. That does not feel right in any way. It's a miracle that I got the GTX 980 in there. It is a miracle I'll get this in here. Oh, that does not feel right in any way, shape, or form. Now to get it out.
In Team Fortress 2, new highest settings, we see that MSI Afterburner has just finally engaged. Woo! And I nearly died! Oh, with our favorite averages above 100 and our 1% lows near the 60 levels, we see the RX High 50 is pegged at 100, running at a pretty high temperature. Where is the refill crate? Where? Oh. But anyways, our 1% lows are near 60, 0.1% low at a 30. CPU is getting decent utilization, although could be better, could be worse, depending on how you will see it. Oh, fuck. In World of Warships, we see that we get a stable 0.1% low of number, 20, a 1% low of 32, and an average around 35. FSR really does help. I consider these playables as playable numbers in World of Warships as this game is a warship game. You're not in a first-person shooter where, unless you're playing Destroyer, I guess, where every FPS matters. Our little 550 is the Dell low-profile variant, so it's struggling. It's a little cooler off. I'd recommend, if you can, to get some. Oh dang! I'd recommend you get not an OEM version of the 550, or whatever Shenzhen knockoff version you find on the internet. Actually, the Shenzhen knockoff version is actually a little faster since it's the SP. It's an SP version with actually more cores, unlike a certain 580. In Forza Horizon 5, we have the RX 550 on the lowest setting possible. Oh, I got a fruit roll up in my throat. Anyways, we're near playable FPS of near 30, which I would say is the bare minimum. It doesn't feel great, it doesn't feel terrible, the minimum, which you shouldn't agree with, especially if you already own an RX 550. You should definitely consider upgrading. Just because it works doesn't mean you should stop there. This Dell variant doesn't have a sensor that picks up how much power it is using. So let's just assume it's below 50. Or maybe higher. I don't know. I lost my license plate. CPU wise, Forza Horizon 5 is not intensive in the CPU level, so not much to comment about there. RAM, DDR3, not the fastest, not the best, but if you got 16 gigs of DDR3, you're fine.
So, on to the next card. Yeah.
In Team Fortress 2, 1080p, very high settings, we see some stable averages near the 100 zones, a 1% low of 85, and a 0.1% low around 58. That moment of lag was either the servers or my router. Either way, this game is not the ideal test for the 1650. What it was an ideal test for was the RX 550, as that thing was struggling bad. But anyways, other than the GTX 1650 not stretching its legs fully, we can talk about its low power draw, and not much else. It's basically a 1050, except just refreshed, with a smaller nanometer process. Woo! Our CPU doesn't like this case, especially considering the fact I swapped it out for an i7. Oh, got hit. Sniper. And other than that, there's not much else to talk about. In Forza Horizon 5, 1080p, very medium settings? Yeah, medium settings. We see that the GTX 1650 does pretty decently, with averages around 35, 1% lows around the same number for some reason. I guess MSI Afterburner sucks. And a 0.1% low of 23. Card temperature is doing better than the 980, and we're drawing barely... Wait a second. Let's see how better it gets in Cinebench. Well, I left it sitting for a while, so let's see the point difference and temperature difference. 5070 max? Damn! This... Actually, that's what you should expect from most tower coolers. Even a Hyper 212 would have done this well. But the Hyper 212's days are long gone, as Thermalright has hit the market in masses. But other than the Peerless Wing, is that what it is? No, it's not Peerless Wing. Other than the Assassin King 1 SE, there are other coolers that share more better designs, probably some with vapor chambers, and not to mention the big girthy. Gotta look it up on Amazon for a second. Peerless Assassin V2, one of their largest coolers, and that's just one of their many dual chambered. Is it technically dual chambered? I guess you can technically say it's dual chambered. Chambered tower coolers. As for point difference, I gotta look that up on my computer. Huh. That's strange. Because looking back at our former testing, we have actually lost some points in Cinebench with the stock cooler. That should be wrong, cause we have a better cooler and better temps. But that could be also margin of error, so who knows. It's definitely a performance boost. In Forza Horizon 5, retesting the GTX 1650, we see that we actually got averages around the 90 zone, 1% low around 73, and a 0.1% low of 60. And with our new cooler install, we're not cooking the CPU anymore, but it seems to be still performing around the same, just no longer burning up. 88 degrees wasn't a bad temperature. It is a bad temperature, but it's not like shutting down temperatures. As for our 1650, we're barely drawing over 75 watts, which is pretty cool. And with some minor overclocking, which this card can definitely handle, we can go faster. But this card has no supplemental power holes, so that means you're limited to 75 watts of overclocking. And if you won the Silicon Lottery, you can probably get 100 watts more FPS in this card. And you could probably, maybe you can get this card up to high settings with some FSR to lighten the load. But right now, medium settings 1080p is pretty well for the 1650. In World of Warships, we see this GTX 1650 and our little 4th gen i7 do pretty well in this system, dropping in around, I don't know, I'll put up the price in editing, card into the system isn't a really bad thing because the 1650 still driver supported as of the time of recording, earning even though that's not going to last very long. And we're getting averages near 60, although not all the time 60, as our 0.1% low says is around 30. Our 1% lows are around the 50 zone, and our average is 69. Nice. Our little CPU is is dying, so gotta drink some water soon. Our little CPU is dying because it's cooking itself at 70 degrees Celsius, which I know sounds confusing to a lot of you laptop users, but that's not normal for computers. And we're only drawing around 50 watts, which is pretty low, considering that Intel nowadays is guzzling whatever it wants. But then again, this was back in the day when power supplies weren't in the thousands zone, so actually there was a couple 1,000-watt power supplies, but those were niche and not as not as common as today, where everyone has to get one for your 5090 and insist the 5090 is the minimum for most games. But anywho, focusing more on our graphics card, I would still recommend the 980 because of period accuracy. Not for, I was gonna say period accuracy. Because the 980 and the CPU came out at the same date, or near the same date, not exactly, but near. And that would mean they aren't as bottlenecked. They aren't going to be as bottlenecked as each other. As this? No, the 1650 is just slow from the factory. But old flagship paired with an old flagship is usually better than old flagship being paired with newer hardware. Although that could depend, as pairing a 1080 Ti with a Ryzen 5 5600 isn't exactly a bad thing. And some people pair the 1080 Ti with their i3s, which is actually pretty decent in some benchmarks. And no, I won't be doing a video on that because I don't have the money for a 1080 Ti.
Final thoughts. It's a good system. For 40 bucks, an i5 and the stock cooler was pretty good. This motherboard's got decent support, as well as pretty reliable. No issues, no weird BIOSes. Just needed a new CMOS. But anyways, did I already say final thoughts? Memory issues. My only issue with this case is the lack of airflow. As I added this fan in, I know that might skew testing, but I don't care. I added this fan in to help with exhaust as our power supply was sucking in all the heat and that was making it hot and I didn't feel like losing my house. So I added this in. Most likely you'll be getting something like the GTX 760 or GTX 980 to pair with the system. As of time of recording, they both cost around, I don't know, I didn't look it up yet. I'll put it in editing. But anyways, then pairing up the system with a flagship from the past is pretty good. We didn't see any major dips or drains, and something more entry level that's more modern and still driver supported, like the 1650. Well, that's on the chopping list, but that's still driver supported as of recording. We saw some decent FPS, even though we weren't. What was the word again? Oh, even though it was slower than the 980, but it's for being slot powered and drinking way less power than the 980, it's pretty decent performance. And PCIe 3.0, so no bottlenecks for the 1650. But I'm going to talk about the benefits of pairing a RTX 3050 with a older system. If you got it like for free from an uncle or won a GPU giveaway or just already got it, pairing an RTX car or an old system like this could make for a decent budget RTX system. I mean, the latest i3 as of time of recording, because Intel might finally release the unicorn known as the Ultron 3. 4 cores, 8 threads is still okay in 2025. And there's decent expansion slots here, but that may vary for how much you pay for $40. Because for $40 you can get a more modern 6th gen or 8th gen Dell Optiplex, which has way more CPU horsepower and way more GPU power. But what you lose from getting a Dell Optiplex instead of getting something like this $40 ATX standard case is that you can reuse this case, power supply, and graphics card. If you have a modern graphics card, I wouldn't recommend reusing the 980. So, and if you can even use it as a NAS if you don't feel like reusing this case. That's all I have to talk about. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment, or leave a dislike if you don't.